So I think you have to, as a leader, keep telling this story and not allow people to forget why we are here and how we all started and how privileged and I would say lucky we are to be in this situation. And then use that as motivation to say, okay, what can we do to maximize the chances of success and try really hard to minimize chances of failure.
Some revenue leaders thrive in the chaos of early startup life. They love getting their hands dirty, leading early sales deals, finding product market fit, and establishing a go-to-market foundation. Tushar Makhija, founder and CEO of TeamOhana, is one of those people. Welcome to Grow and Tell, the show where we tell the growth stories of revenue leaders behind successful companies. I'm your host, Alex Krakoff.
Grow and tell, grow and tell.
Tushar Makhija loves the beginning of the startup journey. After starting his career as a software engineer at VmWare, Tushar founded StockEzy, a social community for stock investments. After 4 years, he joined the founding team at Helpshift, where he was the first sales hire and eventually became the VP of revenue, leading the sales to over 20 million in revenue. Tushar then went back to the beginning again as the first go-to-market hire and eventual VP of sales and success at Airbase. Now he has started once again as the founder and CEO of TeamOhana. Today, Tushar and I chat about how he went from zero sales experience to VP of revenue in only a few years, what it means to be a sales leader, and why Indian immigrants are so successful in tech leadership positions. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So I'd love to start with your time at Helpshift, which was sort of your first real sales experience growing a SaaS company from zero. And I'd love to know kind of how did you get that job? Because you sort of made this transition from the founder of a social stock company to being the first sales rep at an early stage company. Kind of, can you tell that story?
It's actually a very interesting path to get there. So when I was still at VmWare, I was moonlighting and I started my company. And it was with two other co-founders who were all three of us were housemates and we went to school together. So we just had a very good rapport. But that company was good to get started in the sense like, hey, are you a founder? Can you build a product? Can you get a few customers going? But it was not going to scale. So I met a few VCs who were like, this is a hobby. It is not a company and it is absolutely not venture backed. But, because you were in the circle, the VCs themselves said, well, we have another company which is doing something interesting that was Helpshift, and they're just closing their seed round. These guys were like early angel investors, and I met the founders, and we hit it off. And the idea was all of us were engineers, and then the two founders said, well, we don't trust anybody. You're an engineer seems like you can talk to other people. And we were building a technical product. It was an SDK that we were selling to game developers. So like, I think you can do this. And the person who convinced me to join was the co-founder and CTO of Helpshift, is now the co-founder and CTO of TeamOhana as well. So it was his idea. He said, Tushar, you're a shitty engineer, but you can talk technology to people. Let's make you a salesperson. That was his exact words. And that's how I got started.
That's amazing. I remember Jack from Lattice once said, it's like, to be a good founder, a good sales rep, you need to be the one who can communicate from like the nerds to the customers, right? And go back to the engineers and go back and forth. And so, yeah, it's very funny to hear, how that engineering experience, informed your sales process.
And it was amazing. I was like, I need at least $100,000. I have a mortgage. So they're like, okay, fine. And I didn't understand equity at that time. I didn't know. I had to Google what SaaS was. I didn't know anything. All I knew was, hey, I want to do this. I want to be knee deep in startups. I've realized that if I have this unique opportunity to work with, our CEO was a great product person. My CTO was great at technology. They were building something really exciting. So just took the leap, couldn't just say no. So I'm happy I did that.
And so you went from having like basically zero sales experience to becoming the VP of revenue. And from my understanding in kind of those early days, you were essentially like a BDR, and then you worked your way up and were running deals and then eventually managed a team. Like, how did you figure out how to do all this stuff? How did you figure out sales? How did you figure out how to be a revenue leader? Yeah. What was that learning journey like?
I think that the learning was it was a full 4-year, graduation. So the first year it was just me, and the idea was we didn't have a pricing model or anything. My founder was like, "Can we get 100 people to use our SDK?" And we got tech crunched, so that just basically got people to sign up on our page and say, I'm interested, right? So I did. I used. I said, okay. I was lucky that we had a consultant who was our marketing consultant, and he said, Tushar, you need to follow up 3 times. He gave me these tips, like at least 3 times. See if you can find them on LinkedIn. Try and see if they, if somebody's giving a phone number, try and do that. Offer them a lunch and learn card, or like, even at that time we were offering that, we will come and buy you lunch, because it was not like Zoom meeting. We will just come and meet you. And most of our customers were centered around Palo Alto and San Francisco. So I think it was just that early phase was, yes, learn how to demo. I think one thing I'm the type of salesperson that who really focuses on the product. So I think the early journey was very simple. Learn the product, learn what you can, like learn what resonates with people, because I think developers are really direct with you. They're like, this is shit, it doesn't work. Oh no, this is how it works. And I would say that the community also really helped. So we were funded by True Ventures. So Lars Nilsson was always available for office hours, and I was a voracious student, and I used to go bother him a lot, and he was very kind, and he always answered my call. I was reading everything that was available on inbound marketing on HubSpot, like everything. Like I don't think there was any ebook that's like, they provided all the tips and tricks and do's and don'ts. And then in the second year of our operation, or the second year of my selling, SaaStr became a thing. So I met a few people at SaaStr, and Matt Cameron became one of he built Salesforce APAC and EMEA teams. And he was super smart. And again, I befriended him, and I kept emailing him, asking him questions. I still ask him questions. So it was read, learn by fire, learn by doing, and then lean on these certain people who've just been very kind and shared their knowledge. So I think that's how I became a salesperson.
No, I was going to say, I mean, that's like the best part about Silicon Valley and just tech in general is I think people are so generous with their time, and they're always willing to talk with you and share advice. And like, I think even when I was at Lattice, it's like, all right, just trying to find people a stage or two ahead of me to get a sense of how are they doing it. And so that I can kind of, apply those learnings to myself. And yeah, like, I mean, Jason Lemkin on Twitter or whatever, like all the tweets, all the blog posts and stuff, it is just so phenomenally helpful. Yeah. Oh, Quora too. Yeah. But she still seems really big, but no one, I don't know if anyone's actually reading Quora anymore.
Now we just read him on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I think just to add there, right? I think the leadership part was actually really hard, because I had managed engineers before, which was again very different. I think a lot of managing salespeople was getting over the thing that, can I be the salesperson? And now this may sound ridiculous, but I have not seen a lot of Indian salespeople or sales leaders, right? So my whole team was these 6'5" white boys, and lacrosse players from all these different universities, and I have never played competitive sports. My competitive sports were getting high grades. I mean, growing up in India is a little different than growing up here, but I think that was imposter syndrome or something. Can I do it? Can I not? And I think my team quickly realized 2 things. And I'm still in touch with many of them. And they said, you always led by saying, let me do it first and I'll show it to you, rather than saying, go and figure it out. Like if there's a cold call, I made cold calls. I did cold email. I did all the demos, right? Like if I was available, I'm on the demo with you. Right. So I think that was the trust that the team said, and then the leadership evolved from there. And I've made a ton of mistakes, but I think to become a leader, first you have to be accepted as a leader by the team, and then they let you become better at leadership. So that was a whole journey for 4 years.
Yeah. No, I mean, that very much resonates with me. It's like you first need to be this player coach where you're showing them how to do things. You're rolling up your sleeves. Was it servant leadership? I think is the term, right? You're in the front lines working with people, and then you show them how to do it, and then you can sort of become more of a manager and a leader. And for me, like management is also different than leadership. Like management is telling somebody how to do something. Leadership is like inspiring people to a sort of outcome, and yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
I still say I'm a sucky manager.
Yeah.
I am a decent leader. I am a sucky manager. It's like, but with all these books that are being published, Scaling People being the most recent one, they're just telling you some of the best practices. So now I'm diligent with doing my one-on-ones. I write things down. I use a Notion page. I'm not just remembering things. So yes, I think becoming a manager is harder than becoming a leader, at least for me. And I think managerial processes are what makes a good manager and a good team. And I think those are some of the processes that I would say everybody who's not read Scaling People should start reading Scaling People. That's it. You don't have to hear it from me.
Yeah, we can put that one in the show notes. And then, so I'd love to talk about like the revenue journey, because I think when you were at Helpshift, you basically got the company to around 10 million ARR. And from my understanding, it was mainly like big enterprise deals you were working. Is that right? Can you paint a picture of how that all kind of worked in the early days?
Yeah. So our first year was just get 100 customers, right? Literally, that was 2011. In 2012, my founder said, hey, we have to start thinking about Series A and we need to be a million in ARR. And I'm like, okay, all of these 100 people has to give us $10,000. Guess what? Nobody gave us, all those 100 people didn't give us $10,000. But because we had some early traction in this gaming vertical, we got introduced to Supercell. And Supercell at that time was building this new game. They were a Zendesk customer, and they were like, okay, Helpshift brought in the whole support experience inside the game. So you never left the game. It was not an email. Even the response that you were going to get back from your support team was sent as a push notification. They really liked it. And right in October, they signed a pilot for 3 months. And I said, I'm going to come to you in early January to see if you would want to sign a deal. I got there early January, and they signed a deal, and it was a million ARR for one game. And then I literally called my CEO and said, I think we can get a Series A now, can we? So that was the Series A journey. And then from there, I think we organically just realized is that the larger the size of the company, the larger the size of the app, because it was somewhat of a B2B to C model, right? If you don't have a lot of consumers of your app, then you don't have a support problem. And if you're not doing in-app purchases, then again, you don't have a support problem, because in-app purchases was one of the best ways. So we quickly realized that all these social apps are out of questions. It's an advertising model. Nobody's going to pay us. So we looked at who is selling the most inside the apps. And we had news companies like Zeit app, Flipboard, Pulse. They all became customers because they just launched some kind of a subscription tier. And then it was mostly mobile gaming that was huge for us. So second year, we went from 1 to 4. Third year, we went from 4 to 8. In the fourth year, we actually slowed down and we had our first hit of churn. And that was my first learning that mostly in the third year, all your first year customers are going to be churning or would like to, or want to churn because you've not delivered on their promises and you have literally failed them for 2 years of renewals, making promises. So we went from, we were supposed to be a 10 million ARR company, but we had 2 million in churn. So we ended up, so bookings was high, but ARR came low. And that's when we got a professional CEO. And then in the next 6 months, we went from 10 to 18. And so we can talk a little bit more about how we went from 10 to 18. But the journey from, I think the more rewarding journey was from 1 to 8, because building quotas, setting up territories, segmenting customers, figuring out what is an SMB motion versus what is a mid-market motion, different pricing structures. I think that, in a way, that taught us and made me ready for, Airbase and now TeamOhana, but also made the company ready to tackle that next leap when Linda came in, right? So yeah, I think so. When I left the company, we were an 18 million ARR company, and it took us 4.5 years to get there.
Gotcha. And what was it like working with a professional CEO? I think it was like Linda Crawford, right? And she had a pretty big career before Helpshift at like Cybele and Salesforce. Like, how did she change the company? And were you nervous to work with somebody like that?
Yes, I was very nervous. I thought, also we were running a startup, and we didn't have like good processes, or sometimes we were yelling in the office, and now we were told that you're suddenly going to be buttoned up because Linda is not going to listen to any of this nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be angry, you can't be like pounding this thing, you can't put the music up, no beer pong starting at 4 p.m. So we were suddenly asked to grow up. I think that was one change, on the good side, right? I mean, she helped us become more mature, responsible adults. So after she finished adulting us, I think it was very clear in the sense that she said, you guys are a great technology, but you haven't yet figured out how to, scale the company. So she brought in so I think she spent more time fixing the HR function, the marketing function, bringing in some product and sales, like product leadership. She gave me a free rein. She said, Tushar, we want to get to a 20 million ARR company. Can you take us there? And she gave me that target in a year. I got to 18 in 6. And she literally said, there are some things that you do that I don't like, but in the interest of revenue, in the interest of time, I'm going to let you run with your process right now. But realize that at the end of this year, you're either going to up level to match my standards, or you're going to be layered, or you're going to be out. Those are the 3 things that are going to happen, right? And it was very transparent, and she gave me direct feedback. So I think when she laid things out that way, it made me very clear on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And if you know where your end is going to be, there's no surprises. So every month as we hit our goals, I was telling her that, okay. And then come July, I said, hey, I'm flying to, actually June 15th, I was flying to Cary, North Carolina to meet Epic Games. So Epic Games was on a 3-month pilot, and Fortnite was just going to be ready to be launched on mobile. And they were like, okay, we need Helpshift in mobile right now. That was a $1.5 million deal. That got signed on June 30th. So June 30th, we were at midnight. Literally at midnight, it got signed because the CFO had to take a last minute flight out to Hong Kong. When he landed in Hong Kong, he had the DocuSign and he signed it at the airport. And then we were an $18.5 million company on that day, ARR. Right? So I came back and I said, I think, Linda, you will get to 20 million without me. In the next 3 months, let's find a way for me to transition, because I was ready for a new challenge. I didn't see myself growing more, because I think, and here is the thing, if I wanted to up level myself, I actually wanted to say everything that I have learned in the 0 to 1 and the 1 to 10 journey, how do I do it again at another startup? So I didn't want to do the 20 to 50 journey. I thought that I would not have enough time to learn the ropes till I've at least done the 0 to 10 journey one more time. So that's why I left.
Gotcha. And I love how just honest you were with yourself, around like what you wanted out of your career. And like, honestly, I felt the same sort of thing at Lattice. I took Lattice like 0 to 50, and it was like, I didn't really, it was appealing to try and do 50 to 100 plus, but it's just not quite my personality necessarily. And I wanted to do another crack as a founder, right? And do the 0 to 1 and put those skills to use. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how different people fit at different stages. And I think it's just so important to just be honest with yourself around what you actually enjoy doing, where you add the most value, and all
Exactly.
that stuff. Yeah.
I think the enjoyment was the most important. That building something from the ground up is, I think, was where I found more comfort and more joy, right? So I was like, okay, let's see, whatever we do, that is the next thing that we want to do. But I didn't have anything lined up when I left. I literally took 6 months off.
Yeah, that's good. You need a break, and then you went back to early stage, right? You were the first sales hire at Airbase.
Yeah,
Can you talk about getting involved with Tejo and Airbase, and what it was like to kind of build that sales team from the ground up?
yeah. I think so. Back in those days, that you might have seen this, that the drift guys used to walk down streets of Boston and record
Hmm.
themselves on LinkedIn.
Shout out Dave Gerhardt. Yeah.
Yes. But so I literally recorded a video walking down University Avenue because that's where I had been given the job offer in Coupa Cafe. I got the job offer for Helpshift. So it was like full circle for me. My first large company account was Flipboard, which is also on University Avenue. It's right in that like blocks. Um, and I was like, this is, and also VmWare was around there. So I was like, my life surrounds here, and I moved out and I now live in the city. But I was like, let's go back there and walk those streets. I recorded this long 15-minute video and posted on LinkedIn. One of the people who saw that video was Tejo Kote, and he sent me a LinkedIn message. He said, Tushar, do you remember me? I'm like, yeah, we had some, there was an engineer that used to work for Tejo and work for Helpshift. So I'd heard about him in his previous company. And he's like, I'm doing something new. It's a SaaS product. You should check it out. I want to talk to you. So we started talking so we met in August, we met in September, then we met in October. He closed the round in October. He was debating whether he should take a round or not. And then he said, I think there was, again, a little bit of skepticism that is always there from some of the VCs. Like, he's only done it once. Can he really do it? And I think Tejo's was very clear. At least he's told me that. He's like, he wanted someone who can get their hands dirty. He was not looking for a VP of sales who is going to just come and figure things out. Because one of his first questions was like, when are you going to hire your first people? I'm like, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. I don't know. Till I become an expert in spend management, there is no reason to hire anybody else, right? So again, things moved faster. I closed my first deal was Clearbit, and I closed it in the first month of joining Airbase. And we hired our first AE in April. But I think it was, again, the founder has to be really clear on what they are looking for in their salesperson or in their first sales hire. And the first sales hires usually cannot be only focused on selling. They have to be focused on messaging. They have to be focused, and you have to be ready to get your hands dirty. And I am that kind of person. If actually you restrict me, I'll get annoyed. Like, I want to attend product meetings. I want to attend anything that we're doing with marketing. I want to write the sales email. I want to be part of how the deck is being made, because Tejo was using the same VC deck on the sales side. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to work, Tejo. And it's like, why? Look how much money I raised. I'm like, sure, but you had to give up equity to get that money, right? These are people you're only giving the product to. Let's change it a bit. But he was very accommodating. I mean, there are some people who just want to be successful and don't get in their own way. Tejo is one of them. He knows what he wants in life, and he will see, like, okay, I need to get this done. If Tushar is helping me, I'm going to support Tushar. If Tushar is not helping me, I'll go find someone else, but I will be successful, right? That's the great spirit that he has. So yeah, that's how I joined Airbase.
And then spend management is super crowded, right? Like, you have Concur, who dominates the enterprise, and then, a bunch of these startups, right? Brex and Ramp and Airbase, right? Competing for both startups, and then everyone's trying to, move up market. Like, how did you think about establishing the sales motion in such a competitive space? How did you sort of think about those pressures?
From the very beginning, there was a very, it starts with this product vision that Tejo had, right? He said, I want to be the place, or Airbase is going to be the place to manage all non-payroll spend, which is a very technical phrase, but it makes a lot of sense to the buyer persona. So it starts from there, where he simply says that The vision is card spend, bill payments, and expense reimbursements. Those are the three ways you spend money. I'm going to track and manage all of those three things. So that set the stage on what we want to be. And we actually said Brex is a startup corporate card. Ramp is a corporate card. Ramp came a little later. And we were the only spend management solution per se for the mid-market, right? So that was the early understanding, and then we just doubled down on that. We were the only company back in 2019 that was talking about spend management. There was a company out in Europe called Spendesk. They were talking about spend management, and we were talking about spend management here. I think that was, once we knew what we wanted to be, the credibility part actually started by, First Round Capital has this very good office in the city, in San Francisco, and we requested them that once a month on a Thursday evening, we will throw a party there. And as part of that party, it'll be like, it was not really a party, but it's, you have like wine and food in the drinks in the beginning for networking. And then we invited one CFO, and we launched this thing called the Path to Becoming CFO. And I think that was the most important place where everybody who is a controller or a VP of finance or a head of finance, anybody aspiring for CFOs, we had the CFO of Salesforce there, the CFO of Asana, a lot of accomplished names. And when people hung out there, they started listening about us. And then, we are not pushing anything. They'll come and talk to us. Hey, what do you guys do? In your second meetup, in a third meetup. So in those 6 months, I think the word around the vision of Airbase really took up. And third thing that we did was we said, we are not a free product. We're going to charge you. So basically, any smaller company, we completely removed from the equation. So two contrarian things. This was not free and there was no credit. It was a pre-funded model. That removed the need to compete with a Brex or a Ramp at that free tier completely. So we chose our own tier, and then we hyper-focused on, hey, we have the best integration into NetSuite. We have a customizable approval matrix, and we've got all of these different features that the others did not have because they were just getting a lot of customers with the high cashback, but only doing corporate cards. So I think it was a combination of this approach to get the like-minded people together in a room, give them some value, and then tell them about what we do, and then be hyper-focused on what we are doing, what we are and what we are not. And we simply said, you want credit? We don't have credit. I'm sorry. Let's go away. Right? So I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, it's such a good lesson in there of just being really clear around what your ICP is, building for them, saying no to things that might seem appealing at the time, but just being super focused. And I still remember, like, I live in San Francisco, and I remember Airbase had all the billboards around with like controllers on them, and it's like these are like unsung heroes. Like, no one has put a controller on a billboard ever, right? Like, they're the unsung heroes of companies, and it's really cool how Airbase kind of like made them a hero and elevated them as a persona and a professional. Yeah.
Straight out of Benioff's playbook.
Yeah.
Right. It was straight. It's a chapter in Behind the Cloud on how he made customers as champions, right? Sometimes when we speak during podcasts, it seems as if all of this came naturally. There were a lot of failures in the middle. Like, I had this huge argument with Tejo once when I said, Brex is offering 2%. I want to give 2%. And he was like, no, if you do 2%, I'm just going to bleed a lot of capital. We're going to set the wrong thing. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to? So then I negotiated with him and said, okay, what if we get spend commits from people? If we tell people that only if at the end of the year, if you have spent, say, $1 million on our cards, we will true you up to 2%. And he was like, okay, done, right? So another thing is that founders by nature and by design are headstrong because they have to be, right? They are trying to create something out of nothing. So they are going to be true to their convictions and beliefs. If you want to join an early stage startup, you cannot be coy or shy and not speak your mind, right? You may get fired sometimes. Your boss may get irritated sometimes. But if it all works out, then it will be a very good journey. I mean, 2 years, the valuation of the company went from 30 million to 600 million. We went from 0 to 5 million ARR. And, that was the pedigree that when I left. So I left at Series B because it was again, the same thing hit me was like, okay, Series A was preemptive as a round. We didn't deserve a Series A, but valuations were skyrocketing. We crossed that hurdle. We went to 1 to 5 very quickly. But now, if you are valued at 600 million, this 5 to 50 journey is going to be crazy. And we had not figured out, we were not ready for the 5 to 50 journey. Again, preemptive round, right? VC comes and gives the money. Nobody was asking the hard questions at that point in time, to 2021, that what are you going to do with the money and how are you going to grow, right? Because it takes time to figure all of those things out. So again, I took a week off and I went to, this was, I went to a secluded place just to sit down and think through what I really wanted to do. And I realized is that this is my opportunity to become an entrepreneur myself and start a company. And this idea of headcount management came from while I was working at Airbase. So I said, okay, now is the time to leave on a high. Teja is not going to screw this up. So my daughter is going to go to school. My equity is going to pay for her. So I was like, there was some, I know my wife works for Google. So she'll pay for my, health insurance. So okay, health insurance, check. Future of the baby, check. Okay, let's go do something on my own now. Picked up the phone and called the CTO, my co-founder at Helpshift. And I said, VG, he's like, about time, dude. It took you so many years to come up with an idea. I'm like, I think I have this now. Do you want to? So we spent the next 6 months talking to CFOs and heads of people, just finalizing the idea. And then in October of 2021, we raised our seed round.
Awesome.
Right before shit hit the span.
Yeah, a good time to raise a seed round. And that's when we met, I think, too. Like you were poking around the idea of TeamOhana, which is the new company, and headcount management. And I'd love to hear what has that transition been like? Because it is very different being an early revenue sales leader to a founder. I'm going through that myself. How do you think about that transition?
So one quick correction. I think you and I met for the first time on a phone call because we hired James Yu as our head of demand gen.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So we go back much further than that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think there were two, I would say that I felt really comfortable starting the company and finding design partners and doing the early pitches and talking to VCs and talking to potential, customers. And because that's exactly what I did at Helpshift and at Airbase. Nobody knew about spend management. Nobody knew about what in-app customer service. What the hell is that? Customer service means Zendesk. Why do we need something else? So I think that muscle was built out. What was hard is I'd never hired, in the last decade, I'd never worked with any engineers directly, right? I would work with product teams. So how do you actually become a good leader to the engineering organization was really hard for me. Because I don't think any engineer joined this company because of me. They joined because of my co-founder, right? So allowing my co-founder to find, even though I hold the CEO title, allowing him to have that kind of influence on the company, and not just in the boardroom and ownership, but even outside on how we're going to set up our operations. Because the first 10 hires were all engineers. There was nobody. I was the only one in go-to-market and all things that we had to do. So I think that was the hard part. And I think leaning on my co-founder really helped. The other transition was, which I still feel I'm still transitioning, is that there is a lot of, I felt that if I made a decision, it'll go to Tejo, and then Tejo is going to either approve or not approve. So there is some onus on him as well. Now there is nobody between me and this. I have no air cover. You get into this meeting, people will say, Tushar, these are the pros and cons. This is how much engineering resources we have. This is how long it is take. How do you prioritize? And at that time, we have to think about all these things. Okay, what should we ship first? What is the highest value to the customer? And sometimes those decisions, I slow them down. They're like, make the decision. And like, no, let me go talk to someone else, right? Because sometimes you want to lead with your gut, and sometimes you really don't want because you're not sure. So I think that adjustment of making these decisions and trying hard that these decisions are good enough decisions, I can't blame this on anybody else. It's nobody else's fault. It is my fault. I think that is the hardest part and hardest transition. Still going on in my head.
Yeah, I'm dealing with the same thing. It was such a comfort at Lattice. Like, Jack, all right, Jack, you can, like, I'll just focus on marketing. You make the hard decisions around financing. And, I can give my advice and my input. But now at Doc, it's like so existential, right? Every little decision from financing to, product stuff to sales, go to market, hiring, it's all on me to figure that out. And I have to live with the right decisions and the wrong decisions. And it's so rewarding when it works out. But I've made a million wrong product decisions, and then I have to deal with that, like delay in our product or whatever it is. And yeah, it's a funny mental game you play with yourself as a founder.
Yeah, and I think that's where like I think now more than ever as a founder, I find it the importance of carving out some me time. The importance of carving out extra time for the family. I think these were the things that I didn't appreciate. But now I'm like, I cannot be walking around irritated. I cannot take the Friday evening and make it my Saturday morning. I have to snap out of it. I'm going to say, you know what, this is the weekend. I have to, I have to take my daughter out to her class to meet her friends. I have to take her to the park. I need to focus on that and find happiness there and not be worried all the time. So to compartmentalize and not be a founder for those few hours is hard to do, but a must do. Otherwise, we'll just burn out.
Yeah, no, the compartmentalization, is that a word? Yeah, it's so important. It's like you need to, like, when you're focused on work, you need to be on that. But when you're watching TV, you need to be able to be focused on that. And I don't know, that Bob Iger book he put out, I guess a couple of years ago, has so many good stories of how he's compartmentalizing as like the CEO of Disney when all these crises are going on, but then he has to give a big talk. And I think that is just like what it is to be a CEO and to be, the person in charge of a company, which is hard, but rewarding in a lot of ways too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like I think people who do decide to become entrepreneurs and start companies, and it's like I was telling this to my team just on our team meeting last week. As I said, hey, sometimes we hit our goals, sometimes we miss our goals, but let's sit down for a second and realize this. How many people come up with ideas? How many people come up with good ideas? How many people come up with ideas that get funded? Okay, let's say you got funded. How many people build a team? We have 22 people around the world now, right? 22 people, so 20 because the two are founders. It's like 20 people have decided to come together to build something. That is basically, they believe in this. And I'm like, these are all the total percentage of success is very, very low, or chance of success is very, very low. But let's enjoy all of these successes. We have a band of maybe 20 people who are working really hard. We've got 20 customers. They buy the product. They have paid for the product, right? And they use the product. You have all the usage metrics on your dashboard. So I think you have to, as a leader, keep telling this story and not allow people to forget why we are here and how we all started and how privileged and I would say lucky we are to be in this situation. And then use that as motivation to say, okay, what can we do to maximize the chances of success and try really hard to minimize chances of failure. That framing, I think, has helped me and is now helping my team also to come to terms with like, hey, how they should be thinking about building the company and how they should be thinking about being an early employee at a startup.
I love that. Yeah, got to celebrate the small wins along the way, and and the journey is actually the really fun part. And so you mentioned like you have 20 paying customers, and you started the company like a year ago. How have you gotten initial traction? Especially, I mean, the economy, especially for SaaS, is so hard right now. Like, how have you kind of established the sales motion? Are you doing a bunch of proof of concepts, or how does it kind of work in right now?
So we started like officially selling the product last year, but we were in stealth for like over 8 months. In those 8 months, we built with a few key design partners, and we used the what we learned from those design partners to then advertise to other companies. But our focus has been like building this sales motion is a very heavy outbound motion. So I'm focusing on three things, I would say. I mean, I give you a lot of credit because I've read your blogs and I've seen how you are doing things at Lattice. I think first, as the founder, you have to be out there and you have to be talking about what you really passionately believe in and why do you think this is going to change the world and why it is better. The second thing is that my first marketing hire has a very he everybody has this choice. Are you going to go with demand gen? Are you going to go with content? I went with content, right? So we've got some, part-time resource on the demand gen side, but I wanted to build our marketing muscle around content. So now we have a podcast, we have a blog, we've got all these resources, downloadable things. And I think that is really helping us become the people who talk about headcount planning, headcount management, right? And because we are the ones talking about it as much, I think that has organic attraction that is coming. So we do a lot of outbound. That is in my DNA, because I've done that a lot in all the companies that I've been. But in that outbound, we really, rather than just asking for meetings, we actually push our content. So it's not just because marketing can't send a cold email to people who have never signed up for anything, but I can send them through outreach, right? It's like this. So if they do end up downloading, if they do end up subscribing, then marketing gets to retarget them and send them more information. But we are doing this. So it's predominantly been this content and social push, and you tapping into my network. I sold the first 200 customers at Airbase. So there are a good chance that, some of my early customers are coming from Airbase and we reach out to them even now. I think next 20, 30 will also come from there. And then I would say, somebody said this, it was during a SaaSter event some 7, 8 years back. And there was a sales leader who came and said, don't stop till everybody knows your name. And that is the motto that outbounding as a team, as a department has to follow, right? It's like, we won't stop till everybody knows our name, right? So we want to be in that position when we do send an email or we send a phone call, people pick up and say, oh, I've heard of TeamOhana, right? Yes, I've heard of TeamOhana. So I think that's the spirit in which we are trying to build our, I would say, sales capacity and also our sales pipeline.
So much about SaaS company is just education, right? And just helping people get to an outcome. And if you can be the like central educator for your domain, you win, right? And then eventually they buy, your software to help with that. I'd love to hear from you. Like, why is headcount planning so important? Why did you build a whole company around headcount planning?
So I think, if you want to boil this down very simply, is that people in any company are 80% of your operating expenses. There is no single system today to manage people's spend, right? If you have to just come down to the brass tacks of there is a vendor management software, there is a procurement software, but where are you managing your people? So that was my initial thought process. And then that manifests in many different ways. How do you grow your organization? Where would you hire? How many people would you hire? If you think about like whether it's a small company or large company, organizational growth comes before revenue growth. I have never met, as soon that's what happens, right? As soon as you raise a round of funding, what do? You double your headcount. You say, because I'm going to hire all of these people, I'm going to have more pipeline. I'm going to have better marketing. I'm going to have more features. So if you know that organizational growth comes before revenue growth, we spend a lot of time planning revenue, managing revenue, and then modeling revenue. We don't spend even 10% of that time on actually, if you're a finance person, you're thinking from modeling a headcount budget. How many people are going to be new? How many people will expect raises? What should be our attrition? That will help you allocate capital better. If you are a people leader, then you want to think about organizational growth. Who will these people report into? Which offices are we going to hire in? Which location is best suited for us? And then the third piece of the puzzle is the actual budget owners and the finance leader, say, I would say the VP of engineering and the VP of sales. They want constant information being fed to them and answer a very simple question. Are we going to meet our hiring goals or not? If you don't meet your hiring goals, all your planned features will not happen. If you don't have the features, what is sales going to sell? If sales can't sell, what are we going to market to, right? So it's all such a chain reaction. So that is why this product is, we have designed from the ground up for collaboration. We have designed from the ground up to bring all of these stakeholders into one system, right? And I feel that companies that nail organizational growth are the companies that are going to be super successful. And you will see what happened. We don't have any free money anymore. So you can't just hire and fire. You have to be very deliberate about organizational growth moving forward. And I think the slowdown, or I don't like to use the R word, or whatever this new paradigm we are in, that is more beneficial to a product like us, because we are not about saving money or this. This is about planning, building, growing, right? So I think it's opportunistic to being building headcount management at this time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems so timely as everyone's thinking about their biggest expense, which is people. And I think what I love about what you're saying is that, I think headcount planning could seem like a one time a year process, but in reality, it's like this ongoing thing of, am I hitting my hiring goals? Where are we at to the plan? And it's usually all locked. I mean, at Lattice, it was all locked in spreadsheet, and I had my spreadsheet, and Josh, our CFO, had his spreadsheet, and then we're reconciling it back and forth, and then then somebody changes their spreadsheet you don't even know. And so, yeah, it's amazing to hear just like how ongoing of a process it is. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm very, very excited to get Doc big enough that I can use TeamOhana.
Yeah. Like, well, we already use Doc, so you're building a really cool product.
Awesome.
So we are already finding a lot of value in that.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad to hear it. I'd love to end on a more personal note. Like, you're an Indian immigrant. You mentioned that before, and you've worked at Airbase and Helpshift, which are, I think both Indian founders, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on like Indians in the startup ecosystem, because India as a country is obviously growing. There's a huge startup, ecosystem over there, but it's amazing to see how many Indians have risen to the top of technology, right? Satya at Microsoft, Sundar at Google, Shantu at Adobe. Like, I don't know, what's your take on Indians in the world of tech?
I think Indians in general, right? I think a lot of us come from scarcity. We don't come from abundance. I grew up in a 450 square foot apartment. Mom, dad, sister, and me, right? By the time my father made money, I was already shipped out to the US. So I didn't even have my own room growing up. So when you grow with that mindset and when you come to the US, two things can happen to you. Because US has abundance. So you can either get enamored by all of these things and then lose track, or you take on this, I would say, opportunity and say, hey, we are lucky, we are here. How can we maximize and not just change the trajectory of our life, but change the trajectory of generations to come? I think I'm not trying to say only Indians do it, but I think Indians in technology really embody this. And we're not, you never meet Indians, marathon runners, or now you have in the city here, because we're all trying to become that. But we are not good at that. We are good at that. Intelligence and technology has been, or engineering has been part of our early upbringing. We take engineering classes as early as 8th grade. If now I'm hearing people take engineering classes as early as 5th grade. But I think that just makes it, given this whole ecosystem, we thrive and allows you to maximize your potential. So I think it is just aligning of the stars, and also all your upbringing, right? That what can you do with so many resources and so many opportunities, right? Do you get overwhelmed, or do you capitalize on them and just continue to grow and continue to, generate wealth and generate popularity or create companies, what have you, whatever you want to measure success, right? But I think it starts from there.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tushar, for a wonderful conversation. If people want to follow up with questions, where should they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active there. You can, so it's Tushar Makhija, or just search for TeamOhana, or I'm at tushar@teamohana.com.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And go to teamohana.com. Go check it out, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
That's a wrap on another episode of Grow and Tell. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, or find every episode at growandtellshow.com. I'm your host, Alex Krakov. Thank you for listening.